So today is April the 27th, 2024. We're here with Sister Denise Crockett, who was a longtime member of the Globe, Arizona Stake. And thank you, Sister Crockett, for being willing to meet with us as part of the Globe 50th anniversary celebration. I'm wondering if you would be willing to start talking to us about your upbringing, where you came from, a little bit about your background.
Okay, thank you, first of all, for inviting me to do this. I feel it's a privilege to do this. I grew up in Western Pennsylvania, and like I said to Brother Chambers earlier, I always start with having been born of goodly parents. I was not raised in the church, but my family was very active in the church I grew up in. I went to church every Sunday. My mom and dad were both very active, and I had the same rules that I learned were the same rules as young LDS people when I was a teenager. You know, no dating till 16, and if I wanted to go to things during the week, I had to go to church on Sunday, or else I couldn't attend those things. You asked me about my dad. He would have been the equivalent of probably an area authority 70 today. He visited the synod often, and the church, it was the United Church of Christ, which is a community congregationalist church, and it's really quite common in the New England area. So those Protestant churches, the little town I grew up in was only like 1,200 people, very small, but we had a church on every corner, or maybe two or three. So it was a very religious little community, and if you wanted to change membership from one church to the other, all you did was have your records sent to the other church. So my dad had been raised Catholic. His parents were Catholic. My mom was raised as a Methodist, and when they got married, they just transferred their records to the United Church of Christ. My grandpa, my dad's dad, helped build the Catholic Church in our community, and our house was directly across the street from that church, and my sister and I could sit in our bedroom window and look down the aisle in the Catholic Church to the altar. It was really quite fun to see that. So my dad and his brother joined the United Church of Christ growing up because the Catholic Church hadn't been built yet, and their sisters remained Catholic all their lives. So that's a little bit about my religious background. Our town was tiny, very close-knit. Nobody locked their doors. Everybody took care of everybody else, and it was just a nice little community. I said to one of my friends one time, we grew up in Camelot, you know, it was just kind and just a wonderful growing up.
So how did you find the church?
Well, my conversion story is really quite wonderful. As I was getting into middle high school, sophomore, junior, I wanted to major in music at college. And so I applied to the top 10 music schools in the United States, and BYU was one of those top 10 music schools. And I was accepted at all top 10, all of the schools, and as my acceptances started rolling in like November and December of my senior year, my dad got increasingly, I don't know what the word to say, he got increasingly frustrated at me, I guess, because I kept saying that's not where I want to go. And so in February of my senior year, my acceptance to BYU arrived, and he opened it and saw that I had been accepted, and he came to the school, and I was called out of my chemistry class, and he was standing at the bottom of the stairs with my letter, and he said, "Is this where you want to go?" And the counselor was standing there and said, "Come into my office." So we went in there and I read it, and I said, "Yes, this is where I want to go." And he said, "I'm sending the money today." Now, I was 17. I was going 2,000 miles away from home, non-member, and out-of-state tuition. And he didn't care. He paid all of that and just said, "Okay, I'm sending the money today." So I signed the honor contract, and that was February, and went to BYU in August.
So, so continue with the conversion story.
Okay.
You're still a non-member at BYU. We want to hear the rest of it.
Exactly. So of course, what part of the honor code is that you take the Book of Mormon 101, and of course, okay, I'm Italian, and it was Lamoni and Nephi and Lehi and all of those names that were foreign to me. And so I took Book of Mormon 101, and consequently I asked for the missionary discussions so that I could understand the Book of Mormon for my class. And so they came to I lived in Wymount Terrace at BYU with 5 other roommates, and we had dorm parents, and so we met in the dorm parents' apartment, and they taught me the gospel. And I was converted, but my parents said no. We'll discuss this when you come home for Christmas. In the meantime, I turned 18, and I went home for Christmas, and they said, we don't want to discuss this again until you come home in the summertime. So when I went home in the summertime, I got a job working at the Archway Cookie Company in our town, and worked shift work and kept up my standards at BYU standards, and the people that I worked with asked me all sorts of real weird questions about the church, and I tried my best to answer them. And then my dad had a series of 4 heart attacks in 3 days, and so I didn't approach him about joining the church at that time. And so in those days, our doctor came to the house. He didn't go to the hospital. He was at home in bed for 6 weeks, and he said to me, are you bent on going back to BYU in the fall? And I said, yes. And he said, well, here's the deal, because he knew I spent every penny that I made. And he said, if you buy your airline ticket, I'll support you while you're there, but you have to get yourself back there. So my next paycheck, I bought my airline ticket, went back to BYU, and he supported me. I talked to my bishop at BYU, and he said, you do what your parents ask you to do, and it will all turn out all right. And so I did. I obeyed my parents, and it all turned out okay. So it was 4 years later when I joined the church. I had a boyfriend that went on a mission, and Dad said, okay, you come home. So I went home for a couple of years and worked there, and then I went back to Utah when he came back from his mission, and it wasn't Ken. So, and nothing came of that. So anyway, the night before I left, my dad came up to my room and he said, now Nisi, I don't want you going back there and joining that church right away. And I said to him, Dad, I'm going back there to join the church. I'm not going back there for this young man. And he said, well, everybody has their own religion, and you do what's best for you. So I went back in January of 1970 and joined the church the 25th of that month.
Wow. So how did he react, and how did your family react after that? Were
Well,
they supportive?
Yes and no. My mom was actually more adamantly opposed than my dad was, which was kind of funny because my mom was just the kindest woman that you'd ever meet. And they didn't say or do anything until Ken and I were engaged and getting married. And that was a year and a few months later. And when we told them we were being married in the Mesa Temple, they said, well, we can't go in there, can we? And I said, no. And they said, then we won't come. And I said, okay, this was Easter of 71. And I said, okay. And so I wasn't, Ken's parents were wonderful. They just welcomed me, and they were wonderful. And they said, we'll do whatever, we'll throw the reception, we'll do everything. And 2 weeks later, my mom called back and she said, can we come? Can we sit outside the temple? We have to be there. And so they came. And they waited outside in Mesa before there was a visitor center, before there was a room for people to wait in the front, and my mom and dad and sister and my favorite aunt from California and her best friend all came. So I had 5 people there, and Ken had 80, but they waited outside in the heat, June 15th, 1971 in Mesa.
How did you meet Ken?
We both worked at a bank. We both went to BYU. I opened the bank in the morning and was the first person there and was head of the drive-in tellers for First Security Bank. And so I had 7 tellers under my jurisdiction, and he came in at noon to relieve us for our lunches and things like that, and then he worked in the afternoons, and I went to school in the evenings, and he went to school in the mornings. So we would have never met at BYU, but we both worked for the same bank, and that's how we met. So.
And is his family from the Mesa area?
No, they're here, born and raised in Safford.
Okay.
So yeah.
So how did the two of you end up in Globe?
Okay, so we got married in '71, and I told my grandchildren this the other day. They were talking about wages, and I said, well, when Grandpa and I got married, I made $2.27 an hour, and he made $2.12 an hour, and we were working at the bank, and he heard about a trainee position at Valley National Bank. And so he applied for it. And so we set up an interview for August of '71 and came down for his grandparents' 50th anniversary party and surprised them. But he had an interview with the bank people, and they offered them the job on the spot. And we thought we were so rich, $5,000 a year was our offer. So we moved down to, actually his first assignment was in Morenci, and so we lived in Clifton, and we, this close to Safford, we would drive down on Sunday for Sunday dinner because we couldn't afford to, our finances were very tight, let's just put it that way. And then with the bank, we were transferred around the state. So from Clifton, we went to Show Low for 4 years, and then to Globe for 4 years. And then because of circumstances that don't have anything to do with the church, we went to Gila Bend, lovely city, and Bullhead City, and then back to Globe for another 18 years. So
about when did you first get to Globe?
76.
So the stake was already created by the time you got here?
It had already been organized, and one of my first recollections is the bicentennial celebration at the Miami High School. That was one of the first things that I remember attending, and it was so big and it was so fun. And Ken was immediately called as the stake mission leader, stake mission, whatever it is. So anyway, he did that, and so we had the missionaries around all the time, and that was really fun.
So the bicentennial celebration at the Miami High School, was that, some other people have talked about that. That was a stake activity or something, was it not?
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Oh, I don't remember too much about it except going and having a really good time, and all the different little, there were booths that I remember being set up, and activities all over the place for the children. And of course in '76, I was expecting my 3rd little girl at the time, and was just huge. And so the other 2 were running around playing and having a wonderful time. And I think that was kind of the first time that we got to meet some of our best friends. And, our children kind of brought us together with some of our best friends.
So you went to Gila Bend and then you came back to Globe. What was it like coming back?
Well, we went to Bullhead City in between.
Oh, okay.
For 5 years. So it was great coming back. Ken actually applied for that job. When we left, it was because of Ken's integrity that we left. He had discovered a few things going on at the bank that were not right, and he went to Phoenix and explained them to the people there, and they said, we're getting you out of there because we don't want you to have any of the ramifications from this. So that's why we went to Gila Bend, was to keep Ken away from some of the things that were going to be happening with the bank in Globe. And so he was the bank manager in Gila Bend. We were there around 2.5 years, and then we went to Bullhead City from there, and we were actually transferred at one point, but it didn't work out, so we were there 5 years. And then coming back, like I said, he had applied for the job, and we were thrilled, absolutely thrilled to come back. It was like coming home. We loved Globe. It was really convenient for us. It was, an hour and a half from his parents, an hour and a half from the valley, an hour and a half from Sholo, where we had lived before, and so it was just it's a good little town.
So you spent a lot of your years raising children here in Globe. What was that like?
Well, it was great. My youngest, Danny, started kindergarten in Globe and graduated from Globe, and so he was successful in all of his years, and we just thought everybody just loved Globe, The girls were Monica was in 7th grade, and Megan was in 5th, and Kenny was in 3rd when we came to Globe the second time, and they all had really good friends, and I don't want to say a joiner, but I'm involved with people, and so at that particular time, I was called to be the young women's president in our ward, so I was serving with both of my daughters, and Megan would come in sooner, and then I was the Cub Scout leader in our ward, the den leader, so that was with Danny, and so Kenny came to me and he says, Mom, you do things with the girls and you do things with Danny, how about being the PTO president at East Globe? We need one. And so I said, okay, so that I could do something for Kenny too. So it was busy, but it was fun. And we, both boys earned their Eagles. Both girls got their Young Women's medallions. They had good friends. As I was thinking about the questions that you sent me, I thought, I love it when people from Globe come to our Gila Valley Temple. I just love welcoming them and recognizing them and seeing them. And some of them have to tell me who they are. Because it's been 40 years since I've seen some of them, but it's just wonderful, and some of them are the parents of my kids' favorite people, so they did well in Globe. They were successful in school. They played sports, sang in choirs, and played in bands, and did all the things that we want kids to do.
Now, you and Kenny also lost a child in Globe. Is there anything you can share with us? Has that helped? Has that experience helped you as you serve other people who
Yes.
maybe go through the same thing?
Absolutely. 1977 was a hard year for our little Globe First Ward. The Standages lost their baby on Cinco de Mayo, and the Dawsons lost their children in August, and then Michelle passed away in November. And I really didn't know the Dawsons well prior to their accident, but I was asked to serve, visit with Shirley once a week or so, and we became dear, close, fast friends. And Monica and Trish became bosom buddies at the time. Those two were both 3, and they just bonded really quickly. That was Michelle's second open heart surgery in 1977. She had had one in 1975, almost 2 years to the day prior to the one that we lost her with. And when she had the first, we were in Sholo at the time of the first one, and they called her the miracle baby, because after her surgery, a month later she had grown 5 inches taller and gained 7 pounds, which was remarkable, because at 3.5 she only was a size 2, a tiny little thing. And so almost 2 years later, we came home from primary one day, and she just started throwing up blood. The kids weren't even out of the car yet, and we had pulled into our carport, and she leaned out of the car and coughed up about a cup of blood. And so I didn't even take the other girls out of the car, and I turned around and went to Sister Parmalee's house and dropped the girls off and took her directly to the hospital in Globe. And the young intern that was on duty said, I just can't figure out how this has to do, with her heart. And so he called our heart surgeon in Phoenix, and he said he didn't know either, but to come down the next morning. Of course, Ken was in Phoenix at a bank meeting at the time. And so when he came home that night, it was kind of a surreal experience. He came home and he was so excited to come home, and I said, what are you all excited about? And he said, I bought the girls each a bicycle for Christmas. And I said, well, that's really nice. Where are they? And he said, well, I stopped at the bank and put them in the storage room. And I said, well, that's good, but we have to go back to Phoenix in the morning. And he asked what had happened, and I told him. And so we took her back the next day, and the surgeon took her right in. And when she was born, she had 3 congenital heart defects, which I can't explain them all to you, but her one vein, or it was a vein, didn't go through between the 2 chambers of the heart. And so they took pericardium and made a sleeve. And as she grew, that sleeve stretched out. You know, it was like this, and then it stretched out, so it got narrower. And so her blood from her lung couldn't get in, and it sloshed back. And so what had happened with her throwing up this red blood was that it was from the lung, and her lung had putrefied, and it was dead. And so they said we can take out the lung. So anyway, they did tests and said, we'll do surgery on Monday morning, which was Halloween. And so they put a little bracelet on her and sent us home for the weekend so that we could get the girls. They had gone to Bishop Jensen's house, and we picked them up and brought them to Safford to leave with the grandparents, and took her back on Sunday night. And Ken and his dad gave her a blessing. And Ken didn't tell me this until much later, but he knew that she wasn't going to survive. And he didn't tell me that. And so we got back to the hospital, and on Monday morning she was running a high fever, and so they waited till Tuesday to do her surgery. And 3 times the surgeon came out and said, we have 2 choices to do this or this, and each time it went the wrong way. And so she never regained consciousness from that surgery and died on Wednesday, the 3rd of November. So from that, I mean, I had so many experiences. Sister Cecilia Ellsworth came to the hospital, and you know, I have a hard time remembering. Somebody's going to have to look it up. I can't remember if it was Cecilia or Sister Parmalee that was Relief Society president at the time. They were both good friends of mine, but one took care of the kids and one came to see me, and I don't remember which one was they both had been Relief Society presidents, but I don't remember which one was at the time. Anyway, she and I walked the hall, and she said, what do you feel? I said, I feel like I'm on a tightrope, because I said, I have faith in Ken's blessing, but we had been told if she survived, she would probably be a vegetable. And I said, she was an active, bright go-getter, you know, and I couldn't think of that. And I said, I told Heavenly Father, if it means that I stay home for the rest of my life, that's what I'll do, to take care of this little girl. But she went. So, I love children. I think from that, I have empathy more than I ever did before. I love children. I love the youth. I just can see what they can become. You know, I miss her. I have her little picture on my nightstand, and I miss her every single day. But she's happy, and she's good, and she's healthy, and she's where she needs to be.
So, has that helped you with empathy for other people going through similar experiences since?
Yes, so much so. I had a sister come to the temple just the other night, and the initiatory coordinator, and she came in and sat down, and she didn't have an appointment, and we were pretty full. And she said if I could just do a couple of names, and I said, we'll get you in. And so we just sat there and talked while while we were getting ready for her. And so I got her finally in, and when she came out, she had only done 2 names, and I said, are you sure you don't want to stay? Because there's time now, you can stay. And she said, I think I just needed to talk to you. And that just did my heart so much good. I think that I can't give exact examples, I don't think, but it has given me empathy. And and I love to be able to share with others that are going through that.
Thank you. Now, Ken became bishop in Globe. He also was called to be a counselor in the state presidency under President Watts. Is there anything about either of those experiences that you'd like to share with us?
Ken, bless his heart, you know, traveling around the state gave us lots of opportunities to serve. He was the branch president in Gila Bend. He was the bishop in Bullhead City, and then called as bishop again in Globe. At least once. I'm trying to remember if it was twice or not. He was a good bishop. He was a good man. I have people tell me that all the time. I told Martha earlier, when I go to the store, when I go different places, I run into people that used to live in Globe or are just here visiting, and they recognize me, and we'll bring Ken up and say he was a good bishop. He was a good member of the state presidency, and he was. He had some members of our ward that were a little bit more difficult to deal with. He had members with problems, let's put it that way. And he was absolutely confidential. People always ask me things, and I said, I'm the last to know anything. And that was the same way at the bank. I knew nothing. If there was ever a man who didn't share with his wife what was going on, Ken was him. And a couple of times we had a couple of interesting experiences with that. And I had to just say, he didn't tell me, that didn't come from Ken. You know, there were a couple of experiences in the state where I was accused of spreading rumors, and I said, I don't even know what you're talking about, because Ken didn't share that with me. And I said, I can tell you where it came from, but but I'm not gonna, it wasn't me. So anyway, but he served in the stake. We loved serving in the stake. We loved the Kearney Ward and the Superior Ward and the branch at on the reservation, San Carlos. We loved going to those places, and the Christensens from Kearney are on my temple shift, so we just picked up right where we left off. They live in Pima now, and they're just delightful and wonderful. And so we felt close to everyone in the stake. It was really, really, I think, you know, and I can't judge from when after we moved away, but to me it was one of the, when Martha's dad was the stake president, he's the one that called Ken as the stake mission leader, and he was our bishop the first time we were in Globe, and he gave us good advice, just always gave us good advice. And in fact, we went to him when Ken was called to go to Gila Bend, and he said, you do what's best for your family. You have to do what's best for your livelihood and to take care of your family. And so he gave his blessing for us to leave in the first place. But I just can't say enough good about Ken. I don't know where to start or where to stop. He was a great man, the best man I ever knew, and I was lucky to be his wife.
How long has Ken been gone now?
5 years. March 8th is 5 years.
And you are on your way to the mission field.
Yes, I am.
Tell us about that.
Well, I love it. Ken was good to me in life, and he was good to me after. His brother was so cute the other day. He came over and he said, Ken adored you. And I just love that word. I said, that's better than love. He said he wanted you to be comfortable and happy. And I am both. So about 9 months ago, give or take, I need to go back and look at my journal and figure out the day for sure. But about 9 months ago, I woke up one morning and just as clear as a bell, the words came into my mind: do your mother's research, do your mother's genealogy. I'll have to back up a little bit because my entire life I've dwelt on the fact that my dad's dad, came through Ellis Island 4 times between 1902 and 1909. And he would come from Italy and he would work in the coal mines in western Pennsylvania. Then he would go back home and bring somebody back with him, and then he'd work again. And the last time he came in 1909, he brought Grandma, and Aunt Mary was born on the ship coming over. And so I've emphasized that immigrant status all my life. And so this morning when I woke up, I just thought, okay, so I just went straight to Family Search and I plugged in my mom, and I thought, the thought in the back of my mind was, wouldn't it be interesting if you had patriots who served in the Revolutionary War? So you had this immigrant experience on the one side and patriotism on the other, that you could join the DAR. I mean, it was just a silly, silly thing. So I started doing research, and I called a lady here in town that works with the DAR, and I have 4 patriots on my mother's line in the 8th and 9th generations. And so I have one thing to do before I can join the DAR. So, I mean, I was so excited about that. And while doing my mother's research, we knew my dad's mother's dad, but we didn't know my dad's mother's mother. And I'm doing my mother's research, and I get this little ding on the thing, and there's my dad's mother's mother. So that was November. Well, that was after my mission call, so I'll go back to that later. But anyway, 2 days later, when I woke up, clear as a bell, you need to go on a mission. Just a voice, you need to go on a mission. So that was a Thursday or Friday morning, and that Sunday, our bishop always went down the other aisle of the building, but that day he came down my side's aisle. And so I shook his hand and I said, "Can I visit with you this afternoon?" And he said, "Sure." After the block, and I said, "How about right after primary music?" Because I do primary music. So anyway, he said, "Okay, see you at 3:05." And I said, "Okay." So I went in, and he said, "What can I do for you, Sister Crockett?" I said, "I want to go on a mission." And he just lit up. We opened my portal that very day and got started on the process. And I didn't tell anybody. I swore the bishop to secrecy. I swore the doctor to secrecy, and the dentist, and everybody that I visited with said I don't want to tell anybody till Thanksgiving. And so I met with the stake president on November 5th, and we pushed that little button. And I hoped beyond hope that it would come before Thanksgiving, but it didn't come until the Tuesday after. But I announced to my family on Thanksgiving that I was serving the mission, and they were thrilled, and they've been very supportive and very happy, and I couldn't be happier. I'm just thrilled to go.
And where are you called to?
Austin, Texas. I leave July 20. I report to the MTC in Provo the 22nd of July, and I'll report to Austin 1st or 2nd or 3rd of August or so. I'm flying to Provo, flying home, and then getting my car and driving, because senior missionaries have to have their own vehicle, and I don't have a companion. I said, I've been alone 5 years, and I don't want a companion, so I don't have one. And I'll be working in the mission office, either as the office secretary or the housing coordinator. And I went to Austin about a month ago and met with the 2 sisters that are serving there now, and they're biological sisters from Gilbert and Mesa, and they were just as fun and cute as could be. So it's going to be a fun place. It's going to be good.
Wonderful. Well, I've got 2 things.
Okay.
One is there any other story you'd like to share with us? And then I'll invite you to close with a brief testimony.
Oh, golly, I can't think of anything else. A few things have popped in my mind as I've been talking, but now I can't remember what they are. So I would love to bear my testimony, if I can.
Absolutely.
I have a testimony of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. I've had it for over 50 years, and testimonies waver here and there based on what you're doing and those kind of things, but it's always been strong in my heart. I know
one of the things for the mission is to read or reread the Book of Mormon. So I've already read it once, and my goal is to read it at least one more time, in addition to Come Follow Me before I go. And in the Come Follow Me at the beginning of the book has the little coloring page for children. Well, I made myself some copies of that so I can color it in. So I've got my first one done in pink. We'll see what color comes up with the second one. But anyway, I bore my testimony in church this month, and I just stated, how can you read the Book of Mormon and not know that Christ lives? Because he does. And how can you read the Book of Mormon and not appreciate Joseph Smith and what he did for us? In addition to what the Savior has done for us, none of us would be here. None of us would be, I can't imagine my life without the church in my life. I can't imagine. I've had so many of my friends from Pennsylvania have not good lives, and I feel so badly for them because they don't have the church in their life. And I would just love to be able to say to them, investigate the church, it's true. Everything about it is true. President Nelson is a true prophet. He serves us today, and every day when I look at his picture, I think, how long can we have him? How long do we get to keep him? Although the next few are going to be wonderful as well. I love the temple. I'm so grateful. When I learned about the temple, taking the missionary discussions, however many, 54 years ago, or longer, 59 years ago, having a forever family was the first thing that converted me to the church. And I think that strength has been there because, helped me with Michelle and with Ken. I said to someone one day, my parents are both gone, my sister's gone, all my grandparents were gone before I was a very old, we had only been married 6 months when my last grandma passed away. And so I said, I've been acquainted with death all my life. But because of the plan of salvation, which I love, I'll see them again, and I'll be with them again. And I have to say about my mission, we pushed that button, I'll tell you about my grandma, pushed that button on November 5th, and on November 8th was the day that her name popped up on my screen. And I did her work November 15th. So I had my granddaughter do the baptism and confirmation, and I did her initiatory and her endowment that day. And it's just, church just brings it all together, makes our lives worth living. I can't remember if there's something else I'm supposed to say. But thank you so much for inviting me to do this.
Well, thank you so much for sharing these thoughts with us.
You have a wonderful, wonderful day, and enjoy the temple, and you still have time.